Hello, this is Jerry Marshall. I'd like to continue my path to being an entrepreneur. I'd like to talk a little bit about a business model that I've really come to like and how I got there, and that is the whole business of network marketing. When I was with this Christian organization, we used to have some discussions about how you could reach the world. Jesus made the statement, go into all the world and make the disciples of all nations, and it sounded like his idea was to reach the world. So we used to kind of theorize how you could do that. And one of the strategies was geometric progression. And that is that if I would start out and just say, okay, I'm going to make one disciple this year. I'm going to work with a person and train him, teach him, and all that sort of thing. And then at the end of that year, encourage that person and myself, and I would pick up the same thing, and we'd both do the same thing that next year. So at the end of 2 years, you'd have 4 disciples. And then if you kept that going the next year, in the end of 3 years, you'd have 8 disciples. Well, if you kept that strategy going, you'd reach the whole population of the world in about 35 years. And we always used to kind of theorize, hey, this really is the way to do this kind of thing. So the multiplication is a powerful thing, and it doesn't have to be, hurry up to do it. That was confirmed to me, interestingly, I was in a convention in Chicago, and there was a day we all decided to go do something fun or interesting, and I chose to go to a museum. And I can't even remember which museum it was. There was one in Chicago. But one of the displays there was a checkerboard pasted to the wall. And on that checkerboard, up in the extreme upper left corner, in that square, there was 1 grain of wheat. And the second one over, there were 2 grains of wheat. And the next one over, there were 4 grains of wheat. Then underneath it, there was this little quiz. And that is, if you kept this process going to the 64th square, how much wheat would you have? Well, it blows you away what it is. The answer was enough wheat to cover the entire country of India 10 feet deep. Now that's the power of multiplication. That's the power of geometric progression. And that's something that can work in any business model, and particularly this business model that is network marketing. So that's always kind of driven me there. This thing does work and can work and can work phenomenally well. So that's what's drawn me to it. But there are frustrations associated with that same thing, and I think one of those frustrations is some of the things that have happened within the industry that have given it a bad name. And, as a business model, it's gaining real good reputation in terms of who's endorsing it. For instance, Robert Kiyosaki and Donald Trump both say that if they had to start all over again, what they would do would be network marketing. And I remember that Donald Trump was on David Letterman and asked that question, and that was his answer, and the audience booed, which kind of gives you the idea that there are some things out there that have not necessarily made that an attractive business. But I like his response to it. He said, well, that's why you're out there and I'm here. So I'm a defender of that business, but let me throw out some of my frustrations, because I think those are the frustrations a lot of other people have. And that is that because it's such a powerful marketing tool, there are businesses that start, and they don't have their act together on their business model. And they can blow themselves flat out of the water, is what I call it. And they do. I can think of one that quite a number of years ago, a friend of mine was in, tried to get me involved, and I didn't, but within a short period of time, they were just gone. They had a great product, and it worked, it sold well, but they didn't have a business model that allowed them to keep up with paying the commissions, and when that happened, it just folded. And those are the kinds of things, that's one of those things that just turns people off. This thing doesn't work, is the way that appears, but it's not because it doesn't work. It's because they didn't have their act together. Um, there are other things that some companies get started. They do all kinds of wonder. I think of one company that came out with, they had William Shatner doing a bunch of videos for them. They had a bunch of doctors who were endorsing the product, and they were well known nationally, internationally known people, and they had a lot of slick paperwork and all that sort of thing. And it really looked like, hey, these guys are off and running. They're really great, good product, all that. A friend of mine got involved in it, invited me to get involved in it. The very first check he got bounced. They did, again, it was the business model. It wasn't that the problem that the business is bad. It's just you got to have figured out where to put your strokes and what's priority. Another one that I think is a frustration, and I was involved in a company that did this. There's the promises that okay, you can build an organization and build a residual income and retire, and here's how you can do it, and set it all up. Well, once a group of some people really get successful at it and reach to the point, I think this is good enough, I'll just take it where I am and take my retirement. The company figures out, hey, wait a minute, some of the best producers we have are now loafing. And they change the plan and take away those things. And now you're not anything more than an employee of that company. Those are the kinds of frustrations that are out there. And I think another frustration is what independent business people, and every one of them, every person in these kinds of programs, that's what they are. Because they're independent, they can say about anything they want to, even though the companies try to keep them from doing so. And they exaggerate. And most recently, I encountered that. I was talking to a guy about a service that we offered, and he had gone online and looked up this company. He said, well, there's a lot of negative stuff on the internet about this company. I said, well, that doesn't surprise me. And I said, I can tell you exactly why a lot of it is there, and that is you have people who exaggerate, who are representing the company, but they're independent from it, and they say things that are just not true. Then when somebody tries to get that kind of service, it isn't there. And it's not the fault of the company, it's not the fault of the system. It's the fault of the independent person who exaggerates, who can't figure out how they should be operating their business. These are some frustrations, and I'm sure some of you have encountered the same things. I think there's some answers to that, and that's just good work of doing your homework. There are good companies, there are good products, and there are good systems out there. And one of the things that attracts me to it, another thing is that, going back to Robert Kiyosaki, he makes the point that you need to get into business if you're really going to be financially successful. And the reason he promotes this kind of business is simply that you don't have to know a lot of systems and know an awful lot about business to be able to be very successful in a business, because the company that is doing it well and has a good business plan is already taking care of those things. Anyway, if you're interested in any of these things, we'd like to talk about it, feel free to contact me.